Welcome to Mind Decoded, where we explore the psychology behind human behavior. Let's decode today's topic. You know your field deeply. You've spent years mastering it. And now someone asks you to explain it to a beginner. Should be easy, right? You understand it so well. But somehow, your explanation confuses them. They look lost. You're using terms that seem basic to you but are completely foreign to them. You're skipping steps that feel obvious but aren't. The more you know, the worse you are at explaining. This isn't just frustrating. It's a specific cognitive bias with real costs. The curse of knowledge. And it affects everything from teaching to communication to relationships. Once you know something, you can't unknow it. And that makes it nearly impossible to remember what it's like not to know. Today on Mind Decoded, we're breaking down the curse of knowledge. Why expertise makes you worse at teaching beginners. How this bias destroys communication even outside technical fields. And what you can actually do to explain things clearly when you know too much. Before we begin, a quick disclaimer. This content is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered medical, psychological, or mental health advice. If you're experiencing mental health concerns, please consult with a qualified mental health professional. The curse of knowledge is simple. Once you learn something, you can't imagine not knowing it. You lose access to your beginner mindset. Terms that were once confusing now seem obvious. Concepts that once required explanation now feel self-evident. And this gap between what you know and what beginners know becomes invisible to you. Psychologists Chip Heath and Dan Heath demonstrated this brilliantly with the tapping experiment. They had people tap out the rhythm of a famous song with their fingers. Then they asked listeners to guess the song. The tappers predicted 50% would guess correctly. The actual number? 3%. The tappers heard the song in their heads while tapping. They couldn't not hear it. So they assumed listeners heard it too. They couldn't imagine what the tapping sounded like without the melody. That's the curse. Once you have the complete picture, you can't access the incomplete picture anymore. This plays out everywhere. The software engineer explains a feature using technical jargon that means nothing to users. The doctor describes a condition using medical terminology the patient doesn't understand. The manager gives instructions assuming knowledge employees don't have. They're all cursed by knowing too much. Here's why your brain does this. When you learn something, neural pathways form. The more you practice, the more automatic those pathways become. Eventually, the knowledge becomes unconscious competence. You don't remember the steps anymore because you've internalized them. Accessing the conscious thought process that beginners need requires deliberately reversing automation. That's cognitively expensive. Additionally, expert knowledge creates schemas. Mental frameworks that organize information efficiently. When you think about your field, you're activating these schemas. All the connected concepts light up automatically. You reference advanced ideas without realizing beginners don't have those connections yet. Let's look at real examples. The math teacher explains calculus by saying it's just the rate of change. To them, this is clear. They've internalized what rate of change means. They've forgotten that understanding rate of change required grasping derivatives, limits, and instantaneous change. Each concept that feels basic to them was once difficult. The fitness coach tells clients to engage their core. Seems simple, but what does engage actually mean? Which muscles? How much? The coach's body does this automatically. They've forgotten the learning process of identifying and controlling those specific muscles. The financial advisor tells people to diversify their portfolio. Obvious, right? Except beginners don't know what diversification means, why it matters, what constitutes diversified, or how to actually implement it. The advisor has forgotten these aren't self-evident concepts. Research by Elizabeth Newton demonstrates this. She had people tap rhythms of well-known songs and predict recognition rates. Tappers estimated 50%. Listeners only got 3%. The tappers couldn't hear what the tapping sounded like without the melody because it played automatically in their heads. Now here's where this gets painful. The curse of knowledge damages relationships. You explain something to your partner. They don't get it. You're frustrated because it seems so obvious. They're frustrated because your explanation isn't helping. Both people feel misunderstood. You tell your child how to do something. You skip steps that feel automatic to you. They struggle. You interpret the struggle as them not paying attention rather than you not explaining completely. Conflict follows. You give feedback at work. You assume context your colleague doesn't have. They misinterpret your feedback because they're missing pieces you forgot to include. Communication breaks down. The curse operates at two levels. First, you don't realize what you're not explaining. The gaps are invisible. Second, even when you try to explain, you explain using concepts that themselves need explaining. You're still operating from expert knowledge without realizing it. So how do you actually counteract the curse of knowledge? First, watch beginners struggle. Not casually, carefully. Notice exactly where they get stuck. That reveals the gaps in your explanation. Your brain thinks step 3 is obvious. Watching someone struggle at step 3 shows you it's not. Second, explain to someone with zero knowledge. Not someone in your field. Someone completely outside it. They'll reveal every assumption you're making. Every term you're using that needs definition. Every concept you're treating as basic that isn't. Third, build backwards. Start with the end goal. Then ask what someone needs to know immediately before that. Then what they need to know before that. Work backwards until you reach true beginner level. This reveals the actual learning sequence instead of the expert sequence. Fourth, use analogies from outside your field. Experts explain things using examples from within the field. That's still cursed. Better analogies come from completely different domains. Explain coding like cooking. Explain investing like gardening. The foreign analogy forces you to translate to universal concepts. Fifth, show your work. Don't just explain the answer. Show every step of your thinking. The steps you skip automatically? Those are exactly what beginners need to see. Deliberate step-by-step eliminates invisible assumptions. Here's a powerful variation. Ask the learner to explain it back to you in their own words. Their explanation reveals their actual understanding. The gaps in their explanation show where your teaching missed. Now let's talk about when the curse helps. Sometimes you want compressed communication. Two experts can use shorthand that would confuse beginners. That efficiency is valuable. The curse only hurts when you forget who you're talking to. The problem isn't expertise. It's not knowing when you're cursed. When talking to peers, technical language works. When talking to beginners, it alienates. The skill is code switching. Knowing which mode to use when. Research by Susan Fiske shows this matters beyond teaching. People in power exhibit the curse more. They assume their perspective is obvious. This creates dysfunction. Executives wonder why employees don't understand strategy. They've forgotten employees lack context from executive meetings. Here's the meta insight. Right now, reading this, you're probably thinking about people in your life who exhibit the curse. Your boss who explains things poorly. Your professor who assumes too much knowledge. But you're also cursed in domains where you're expert. The areas where you can't see your own blind spots. The curse is universal. Everyone has knowledge others lack. The question is whether you're aware of it. Awareness doesn't eliminate the bias. But it makes you check. It makes you ask whether your explanation assumes knowledge they don't have. Here's what the curse of knowledge costs. Communication breaks down. Teaching fails. Documentation confuses rather than helps. Products are designed for experts when users are beginners. Relationships suffer because you can't explain your perspective clearly. But when you recognize the curse and counteract it, you unlock better communication. You can actually teach effectively. You can explain your thinking in ways people understand. You can write documentation that helps rather than confuses. You can design experiences that work for beginners, not just experts. You're not a bad communicator. You're not unclear. You're cursed by knowing too much. And that curse is fixable. Watch where beginners struggle. Explain to people with zero knowledge. Build backwards from the goal. Use foreign analogies. Show every step. The curse doesn't disappear, but it becomes manageable, and your communication transforms. Next time on Mind Decoded, we're exploring a productivity myth that's wasting your time. The myth of multitasking. Why your brain literally cannot do two cognitive tasks simultaneously. What attention residue does to your performance. And why single tasking is the only path to deep work. Don't miss it. And that's how the mind works. If this helped you understand yourself better, subscribe for weekly psychology insights. Thanks for watching.